All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our daily Bible study for Tuesday. Sorry about last week. I thought there was going to be some maintenance work. We're literally right over here. You can't see it, of course, but I thought the guy was coming to work on the projector, and then he ended up not coming, so we could have had the daily dose on Friday. But anyway, we are going to continue in our study of the parables today. I think we will have one on Friday. I don't think a guy's coming on Friday, so I think we'll have it again on Friday too. So we're going to continue in our... We're getting down to the end here. Let me pull this up real quick, because I can. I'm pretty sure we only have like 2 or 3 more parables. Let's see here. Oh, I got to update the church website. Yeah, so we have the 2 sons, we have the presumptuous guest we haven't done, we have the parable of the virgins rather. I think that's it. We only have 3 left after this. So it'll be this week and next. And then I don't know what we're going to do after that, if we're going to keep going or not. So we'll see how it goes. If you have a topic that you want to look at in these videos, let me know. Maybe we'll do that, maybe we won't. I'm just checking to make sure the audio is working. Everything seems to be working. So let's dive into our parable for this morning. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 20. Matthew 20 verses, well, the first part of the chapter. We're going to look at the parable of the laborers. I'm just pulling the names straight from the headings in the Bible, by the way. The names of the parables. I'm just... whatever the heading is in the Bible, that's what I'm using. So Matthew 20, let's read this. We're going to break it down as we talk about it. Matthew 20, 1 through 5. We're not going to read the whole thing at once, but I'll talk about some stuff as we go through. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard, and going out about the 3rd hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and said to them, "You go into the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give you." So they went, and going out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour, he did the same. So, basic scenario, we don't really do this as much anymore in our society, but just day laborers, right? They just would stand around and wait to be hired, and they were manual laborers who were willing to work in the fields or work in whatever. It could be any number of things, and people would go out if they needed laborers for a particular job, and they'd hire them, and they'd negotiate a price, and that's what they do. So this is what this guy's doing, right? And again, we're comparing the kingdom of heaven to this situation here. The master, of course, we know who the master is, and he's going out and getting laborers. And we know, of course, I think from a number of places, right? The laborers are who? Who are the laborers in the parable? If we're thinking about the kingdom of heaven versus the situation in the story, people who work in the kingdom of heaven are who? Well, that would be us. That would be Christians, right? We are the ones who are laboring. We're the ones who are working in the harvest. And the idea, of course, of the harvest is we're harvesting, we're reaching the lost, right? Bringing more into the kingdom. So this idea of the laborer, the day laborer, and it's important that the timing is important in this. So he hires some people early in the morning at daybreak for a denarius, and he's going to be paying the denarius to the same. He's going to be paying the same amount rather, no matter when they got hired. So they got hired at daybreak, the 3rd hour of the day, like 9 a.m. maybe, and then the 6th hour and the 9th hour. So we have like 12 and then 3, so we're getting later in the day, but he's still paying them all the same amount. That's important. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing. 11th hour would be, well, what is that? I said 9th hour is what, 6? Yeah, so that's late in the day, way late in the day. The day's almost over, right? That's the point. 11th hour, he went out and found others standing, and he said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" And they said to him, "Because no one has hired us." They just sort of been standing around waiting for somebody to hire them. He said to them, "You go into the vineyards too." And again, the implication in all this is they're all getting a denarius. They're all getting the same amount of money. Doesn't matter when they were hired. These guys are only going to be working for an hour. They're only going to be working for, like a very short amount of time, like an hour, versus the people who were hired at the beginning of the day. They've been working 10 hours at this point, 10 or 11 hours at this point. And the immediate question in the parable, which we'll talk about as we get through it, but the immediate question is one of fairness. Absolute value of money versus an hourly rate, right? He's paying them all the same, no matter when they're hired. And you think to yourself, well, that's a stupid business practice. Surely he could get away with paying the others less. And you'd probably be right about that, but that's not the point of the parable. He could probably, if he was going to be a hard negotiator, well, you go work and I'll give you 1/10 of the money or whatever for an hour of labor. He could probably do that, but he chooses not to. And that's one of the main things about this parable, is the idea that the master can do with his money what he wants. It's his money. He can do with it whatever he wants. He wants to pay everybody the same, so be it. Let's keep reading in the parable. Matthew 28-10. And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first. And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius, which, remember, is what he agreed to pay the people at the beginning of the day. Now when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. And this is very human nature, obviously. You're sitting there, you got up early and you got out to the marketplace where somebody would hire you, and you agreed to work for a denarius, and you've been out there for 10 hours in the sun, and you've been beating on you, and it's just been hard labor all day, and you come in and you see somebody who has just got there. They come back in from the fields, and he gets a denarius, and so your immediate thought is, well, if he got a denarius, surely I should get more than that, right? Because, he's only been working for an hour. So I should get, and you do some quick math, man, I should get like 10 denarii, whatever it is, right? This very human reaction, right? It's a very understandable reaction that this is going to be fair. This is a matter of fairness in these people's eyes, and I think in anybody's eyes. What is fair? How much money should I get? If he got more money, or if he got the same amount of money for less work, that's not fair. That's the immediate thing that we see in this parable. Let's see, keep reading here. Matthew 20:11-16. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, these last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat. But he replied to one of them, friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I gave to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge me my generosity? So the last will be first and the first last. Now, here's an important point. The laborers, the early laborers, they agreed to a denarius. They thought it was fair. They thought, to be clear, a denarius is about a day's wages. That's the actual definition. If you look at, like, in the Bibles, it tells you what the money values are. That's what it says. It says about a day's labor. So the laborers, the people who were hired at the beginning of the day, they obviously thought a denarius was fair. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it, right? They thought it was worth it. They thought they were happy with the arrangement. They only became unhappy with the arrangement when somebody else got as much for less. And we do this as people. It's one of the weirdest things. I just don't understand it. We are more concerned with other people only getting the same amount as we do when nothing was taken away from us. We didn't lose anything. These laborers didn't lose anything. They didn't have anything taken away from them. They agreed to this price. They thought it was fair. They thought it was right. But because somebody else got more in their minds, not that they got more, right? They got the same amount, but for less labor. Because somebody else had a higher hourly rate, they thought it was unfair, even though they didn't lose anything and they had agreed to it. And that's the master's point here, right? I paid you what we agreed on. I paid you what I said I would. If I want to pay them more, it's not anything to you. And it's interesting how the master says this. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? It's my money. If I want to pay them, as much as I paid you for less work, then that's on me. Why are you concerned about it? Why are you worried about it? Is essentially what he's asking them. Or do you begrudge my generosity? Because he is being generous to the later laborers, right? And they're so wrapped up in this idea of fairness that they are forgetting the idea that they got what they they agreed to. It's not like they have this attitude they lost something or that they deserved more. And of course, as we think about the parable, what is he illustrating? The spiritual truth of the parable. Because again, we're comparing this to the kingdom of heaven, right? In what way is this like the kingdom of heaven? Well, if we're the laborers, of course, God's the master, right? Laboring in the kingdom, what's the reward, the payment, as it were? The payment for our labor in the kingdom is what? Well, that's heaven, right? The eternal reward in heaven. And if we're thinking about this, how do we apply this today? I think it's a fairly easy to understand application. It doesn't matter when you became a Christian in your life, the reward is the same. Heaven is heaven is heaven is heaven. It's not like you're getting more of heaven or less of heaven. You get to be with God forever. That's the reward. That's the thing we're looking forward to. So if you became a Christian when you were 15 years old, which maybe some of the people who are watching this did, or if you became a Christian when you were 80 years old, you still get the same reward. Heaven is heaven is heaven. Heaven is not going to be different for those who are Christians for 65 years than it is for people who are Christians for a year. And if we're not careful, we can have the ungrateful, ungracious attitude of these laborers. Heaven is God's to choose. His reward is his to decide what to do with. Because I can't earn it. I can't make him give it to me. I can't make him bless me with it. He has chosen graciously, that's the whole point of grace, right? By his grace, he has offered this salvation to everyone. And so if he chooses to do with what he wills, we have no right to say, you can't do that, you can't do this. And if somebody becomes a Christian later in life, way later in life, and maybe it seems unfair. You didn't have to work and you weren't persecuted as much and you didn't do as much in the kingdom and you've got to live your life would be selfish your whole life and live for the flesh the whole time and now you became a Christian and now you only have a year left of your life and you're going to die and you didn't get to sacrifice like I did and we become bitter, don't we? But the point of the parable is what? Just worry about yourself. And how many of the parables have we read that's really the main point? Just worry about yourself. Are you going to get what God has promised? It doesn't matter what anybody else does. It doesn't matter whatever happens with anybody else. It doesn't matter anybody else's story or anybody else's journey or anybody else's relationship with God. They're going to be dealing with God themselves. Are you going to receive what God has promised? And if the answer is yes, don't worry about other people. Worry about you and your relationship with God, because the reward is worth it, right? Now, there's like 8 things I want to say. At the end of the day, we'll read a couple more verses here. At the end of the day, we know that the cost of being a Christian is the same, no matter when you become a Christian. Let's read Luke 14:25 through 33. Now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the costs, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who will see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to encounter with another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 men to meet him who comes with 20,000? And this idea of counting the cost, right? The laborers in the parable, they all worked the amount that they agreed. Nobody left early. They all worked the agreed amount. They worked until the end of the day. They all got paid what they were promised. And if not, if the king can't, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. No matter if you become a Christian at 15 or 80, this is the same. You have to renounce all you have. And if you became a Christian later in life, I'm thankful that you got to be a Christian. I'm thankful that you have come to the truth. I'm thankful. Even though maybe you haven't been a Christian as long as somebody else, and maybe your life hasn't been full of sacrifices like other people has. If you come to the Lord, you have to renounce your old way of life. And we know as Christians what it cost Jesus to provide that salvation for us. So we need to not be worrying so much about other people. God is going to work it out. God knows the hearts of those who respond to the gospel late in life. Those who respond to the gospel later, God knows their hearts. He knows if they're earnest. He knows if they're honest. He knows if they've really sincerely sacrificed to the self. He knows if they're giving up all they have, if they're changing their life. Don't worry about them. Worry about you. Are you counting the cost? Are you willing to renounce all you have? Are you willing to forsake mother or father or brother or sister or land or whatever? Are you willing to do that for the words of the parable here, the agreed upon price? Knowing the promises that await you. Don't worry about other people, just worry about yourself. God has offered you salvation, and it's worth any amount of sacrifice, isn't it? We know that it is. It's worth any amount of sacrifice. I'm reminded of the parable of the prodigal son, right? This is a very similar parable to this, at least in the final application. The prodigal son comes home and the father welcomes him. And what does the good son do? The son who was there the whole time? How dare you do this? How dare you welcome him? How dare you slaughter the fatted calf? You've never done this for me. I've been here the whole time. This is the same thing of the laborers here, right? We get so wrapped up in other people's relationships with God, in what other people are doing and how God is relating to other people, that we forget to just watch ourselves and be thankful for the salvation that you have. Because isn't it worth it? Let's end in a prayer. God, I thank you for the salvation that you've given to me, for the forgiveness of my sins, and for the forgiveness of the things that I've done wrong. I know that there are others who are watching this who feel the same way. We are so grateful for our salvation, for the sacrifice of your Son. Help us to be focused on our gratitude, to focus on our thankfulness for you, and not be focused so much on others, people who may not be doing what necessarily they should be, but help us to watch ourselves, to have self-control, and to be steadfast and to be patient, because you are worth our devotion. God, I ask you, please be with those who are hurting and struggling at this time, those who have a number of different health issues or COVID, or those who are struggling in different things in their lives. Please give them strength. We know that you can help them in ways that are beyond imagining. We love you and we thank you so much for the things that you do for us every day. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, that is it for today. I don't really have any announcements. Trunk or treat, I guess you could sign up for trunk or treat if you want to be a part of that. Coming up pretty quick at the end of the month. So, and then we'll have closer, not this month, but next, of course, we'll have the Take a Sack, Bring It Back. I think that's it, really. I don't really have any announcements. So, just checking my phone. Okay. So thanks for being with me. We will do this again on Friday, Lord willing. If there's no weirdness that comes up, we will talk about another parable. What was the parable that we'll talk about? I don't remember, but we'll talk about another parable on Friday. If you have any ideas for what you want to do in this devotional after the parables, let me know, and we will see how we do there. Other than that, thanks for being with me. Thanks for studying the Bible with me, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.